Good to have you with us on this Tuesday edition of Schultz News and Commentary. If I may direct your attention to the Washington Post, the reporter's name is Paul Farhi. He has written an article about your good buddy Ed, that would be me, and doing the news on RT America, how I've made this transition that's gone from talk show host, MSNBC, to now I'm the mouth of Pootie and whatnot. A guy who I used to criticize. I don't remember saying that, but whatever. If it's there, it's there. And how we're propaganda and whatnot. And how has Ed done this transition? Even went back and talked to my old buddy Don Haney from KFGO in Fargo. You know what I got to do? And I refuse to comment on the story because nobody writes anything good about me or RT. Just Google my name and you'll see all the negative crap in the world. I think I'm going to have to call up Paul Farhi and say, you know what? You've won a fishing trip to Big Eddy North Country Lodge because there were a few quotes in there that were accurate that I really liked. All right. Bill Clinton is a bitter man. He says that Trump doesn't know much. All he knows is how to get angry white men to vote for him. Well, those angry white men made a difference on Election Day. Trump responds with a tweet saying Clinton ran a failed campaign with an unlimited budget. I don't know who's got an unlimited budget, but it was kind of interesting. We're seeing the protocol and the respect between president-elect and president and former presidents. Is this deteriorating too, that they have to talk about one another? I mean, Bill Clinton says that Trump doesn't know much, takes a shot at him. I mean, the campaign's over. Tell me how this helps Democrats. I'll tell you what the Democrats have got to do to go get those white, angry men that apparently Bill Clinton thinks aren't worth voting. You could take it that as an interpretation of it all as well. But how about this? The Democrats have evolved into, we have the New Deal, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. We have it. They don't. We'll protect it. They won't. That's really where the Dems are right now. By the way, I think my camera's a little bit crooked, but that's okay. The world's crooked. This is a one-man band operation here in the North Country, folks. By the way, it was 25 below the other day. It froze the camera. That's my excuse. The Democrats need to go back to the unions, and they need to ask the unions collectively, AFL-CIO, all 75 or 78 of them, whatever they are, all the way from the pipe fitters to the carpenters to the steel workers to whoever, the bus drivers, the SEIU, all of them. Get to the unions and say, what do you want? What's your priorities? What's your focus? And then go back to Washington and deliver that. Because what unions fight for and what unions have accomplished has helped the middle class in this country. And you know what? There's white, working, angry men in that group that have seen their jobs outsourced, and that's what Trump tapped into. This is not brain surgery. And it's not hard to put this back together because I don't think that Trump is going to deliver to the very people that voted for him. He's made way too many promises. His first promise fulfilled is oil. I was in North Dakota today doing a story on the pipeline. What's the next step? All of them think it's going to get built now that Trump is in as president very soon. He's got this Tillerson as Secretary of State, who's a big oil dealer. Trump's going to look at these protests on the prairie and say, to hell with it, we're building the Dakota Access Pipeline, and oh, by the way, we're going to do Keystone too. So as this unfolds, there's going to be plenty to go after Trump on. But I think the Democrats have got to do what? Just be brilliant on the basics. I may be wrong. I'm here to be corrected by a guy smarter than me, and that's John Nichols, Washington correspondent of The Nation. John, good to have you with us.
Ed Schultz, I will never claim to be smarter than you.
Well, you are. I surrender. You are. No, you're great. John, what's happening here? What's happening?
Well, look, the Democrats are sort of in crisis at this point. They got beat very, very badly. And they didn't get beat just in the presidential. They took a hit in the Senate and the House races. They clearly still have a lot of support across the country. Hillary Clinton had a 3 million popular vote margin, but they couldn't put the votes in the right place. So as a party right now, they are really wrestling with themselves, trying to figure out who they want to be and what they want to be. And you're making a very important point here, Ed. They need to figure out what their touchstones are, what their base is going to be. And by almost any measure, the unions form an incredibly vital base. The unions are multiracial. The unions are multicultural. The unions represent people who've been here multi-generations and new arrivals. They really are in every part of the country, in every region. And so your idea of aligning the Democratic Party more with the trade union movement than it has been aligned in recent years is a very, very good idea. Unfortunately, I can't promise you from looking at them that they're going to do that.
Does Bill and Hillary Clinton have a future in rebuilding this party, or are they done?
I think they're done. And that's not to pick on them per se or to celebrate them. It's just to point out the reality. Bill Clinton is a quarter century beyond his first election for president. And in both of his elections for president, it's important to remember he never got a majority of the votes. He never got a majority of the popular vote. So while he is looked back on favorably by many Democrats, and I think for some good reasons, there's not a tremendous amount of evidence that he is, this remarkable political player. Hillary Clinton was defeated for the nomination in 2008, and then she was defeated in 2016 as the nominee. So if you look at the Clintons' track record, it's not one that necessarily suggests that they have the team or, frankly, all the pieces in place. Now, contrast that with Barack Obama. Barack Obama ran twice for the presidency. He won the nominations both times. He won the presidency both times. And in each case, he did so with a majority of the popular vote. So, frankly, if folks are going to be listening to anybody for counsel as regards how you might put together the coalitions, I think it's more likely to be Obama than the Clintons. Although I would also put into the mix our friend Bernie Sanders, because the fact of the matter
John,
is there's an awful lot of people looking at Bernie.
Yeah, there are, but I still get a sense that the Democratic establishment cringes when they hear Bernie's name. It's almost like they don't want to accept what he accomplished and where he wants to go. Let's back up to Trump for just a moment. What Trump tapped into is something that the Republicans never saw coming. Listen to what Mitch McConnell had to say on a Kentucky education television.
I honestly thought we wouldn't hold the U.S. Senate. I thought we'd come up short, and I didn't think President Trump had a chance of winning. I think there was a lot of feeling among just ordinary people all across the country that the current administration didn't care about them. And Trump was able to convey, oddly enough, a message from a billionaire who lives in Manhattan, a genuine concern for people who felt kind of left out, who were sort of offended by all the political correctness they see around them, and didn't feel like this was the America they were accustomed to.
Well, how is it that a billionaire from New York could identify the frustration of white angry workers seeing their jobs shipped overseas, but the Democrats couldn't? And if they did, they didn't make enough impression on those that they were going to do something about it. I mean, John, is that the election? Is that what it boils down to?
Well, of course it does. I mean, look, at the end of the day, Donald Trump figured out a very narrow route to the presidency. That narrow route began in the Republican Party, which didn't want him, which did everything in its power to prevent him from being its nominee, and which never fully embraced him. But once he had that Republican nomination, he had a good position in a lot of southern and western states. So he had a baseline of electoral votes. What he had to do then was figure out how to get enough electoral votes to prevail. And his strategy of going to industrial states that have been very hard hit by trade and, frankly, by the multi-generational neglect of the federal government. This goes back to the 70s. It was the right strategy. He went to Ohio and Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin and Iowa. He tried for Minnesota. He made a play in several other states that were unlikely states for him. Most of them places that have voted very frequently over the last quarter century for the Democrats. But he delivered a message that was incredibly significant. And whether you like Trump or not is not the point. At the heart of the message that succeeded, in my view, was that thing that McConnell was talking about at the end, that it didn't seem like the federal government, no matter who was in, and that's the Bushes and the Clintons and Obama, it didn't seem like they cared a whole lot about what was happening to factory towns, smaller cities, and rural areas. The biggest thing, Ed, when I analyze these numbers, when I look at what happened in those rural communities, I mean, the Democratic bottom fell out. There were counties that had voted Democratic back to Adlai Stevenson's day that voted Republican this time. And it means two things that are important. Number one, Trump did connect in some ways. But number two, I think that if the Democrats start to think about how to speak to rural America, how to speak to some of those smaller cities, and if they realize that rural America is increasingly multiracial, multi-ethnic, it's a diverse place. It's not just one part of America. There's a lot of rural America hurting in a lot of different ways. But if Democrats start to talk about that and start to connect with it, they have real potential to build back. But if they continue to neglect, vast stretches of the country, they're going to find that those places could ultimately lock in grudgingly, I think, but lock in as Trump Republican.
John Nichols, Washington correspondent of The Nation. He has written his most recent article in The Nation, "The Electoral College Desecrates Democracy, Especially This Time." You talk about the Electoral College. Are we going to ever see any change, or is the popular vote going to not have the weight that some people think it should have? Hillary Clinton over 65 million, 65.8, and Donald Trump 62.9. I mean, it was 2.8 million in difference. The Electoral College, there were some so-called faithful electors that split from Trump, but not enough to make a difference. Equal representation is very important. And this was a rare election in that sense, which I think you point that out, John. What about it?
Well, yeah, I am real concerned about the Electoral College. I'm not a fan of it because I think the great story of the American experiment, and you, Ed, know this well as a kid who grew up in Virginia, was the expansion of the franchise, the making sure that everybody was a part of the political process. And, of course, that means, opening things up for women, ultimately opening things up for people of color, opening things up to 18 to 21-year-olds, getting rid of the poll taxes. We did a lot of struggle to make sure that we have popular democracy in America. We elect our senators, our House members, our mayors, our governors, our city council members, our state legislators, our school board members by popular vote, and we do it with a belief that whoever gets the most votes ought to take the job. And then suddenly we get to the Electoral College and we say, oh, but it doesn't work that way with the Electoral College. And I think it's a very problematic situation. We've, in the last 20 years, had two Democrats, Al Gore and now Hillary Clinton, who got a plurality of the votes. They got more votes than the Republican nominee, and yet they didn't become president. And, I know that now people will line up in their partisan camps. But what I would suggest is that Democrats made a very big error when they came to power in a big way in 2008, 2009, in not addressing the Electoral College, really taking a serious look at it. Republicans may themselves make a big error now in thinking that they've always got to route through it. But the bottom line, Ed, is that I have a lot of trust in the American people, and I just believe that we can trust them to elect the president. And so I would hope that the experience of this election will cause people to think seriously about how you might alter the process. And, Ed, I'm not telling you it's easy, We're talking there about a constitutional amendment, or at least some sort of compact between the states that would be designed to make sure that the popular vote is definitional. But I do think that as we continue on this journey toward democracy, one of the lessons of 2016, as well a lesson of 2000, is that we are in a country where it is possible for the person to lose the popular vote and become president. And I just don't think that's the best signal to have domestically, or frankly to send to the rest of the world.
And Donald Trump in the past has said that he's not a fan of it, but now he is because he won. So we'll see if he'll be the president that will say he'd support a constitutional amendment in that regard. John Nichols, always great. Have a great holiday. Enjoy working with you, my friend. And we'll do it again in 2017, again and again and again. Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ed. I look forward to it, my friend. Happy holidays.
You bet. Washington correspondent of the Nation, John Nichols, here on Ed Schultz News and Commentary. Brought to you by Communication Workers of America, Alliance for American Manufacturing, BioGreen Clean, and the iSave team. We're back tomorrow.
Hey, folks, you've heard me talk about BioGreen Clean. I'm going to show you right now on my airplane just how tough this is. I want you to keep in mind, chemical-free, 100% plant-derived, biodegradable. It is the safest cleaner that you can get, and it's the most effective. Go to our website, wegoted.com, or go to biogreenclean.com. www.biogreenclean and order today.
It's time to continue our conversation about mechanical insulation. Mechanical insulation is for the piping systems in our nation's commercial and industrial facilities. Facility owners are burning up billions of dollars through the lack of mechanical insulation on these piping systems. Call the iSave team. Insulation saves America valuable energy, and this team of energy conservation specialists is shovel-ready to save you money. Visit iSaveTeam.org to have a specialist give your plant an energy audit.
We perpetuate a culture of crime all the way from Wall Street right down to the main street in our hometowns.
It's worse than it has been since FDR took control of the problem and said we can't count on industry taking care of the American labor.
They probably have already engaged into some type of criminal cover-up,
and the law prohibits the government from even doing anything about it.
Catch America's lawyer Mike Papantonio on YouTube at youtube.com/GoLeftTV.